Welcome, I'm Darren, and I'll be your guide today as I rank the best insert card designs for 1991. 1991 is kind of an interesting year for inserts where it's a transition from where everything was different in every single sport to things were starting to be done in the same way across all the different sports. And that was happening in the premium cards. The base cards, for the most part, were not doing that, but the premium cards were starting to have a templated design across all the sports. Yet that didn't necessarily mean that all the insert cards were coming across in exactly the same way. So there was a lot of variety, but the variety was starting to kind of hone in to where companies were now starting to think about a product line that they could repeat across the different sports, whether they use the exact same design or whether they use different designs. So for 1991, with most of the top five list here, we're looking at designs that were done across multiple sports, and we get to see kind of the difference that they had in each of the different iterations, the way that they approached each different sport. And starting off with an honorable mention, I'm starting off with a card that was not in multiple sports because the card company was only in football, which was Action Packed. And I absolutely love the action-packed 24 karat gold cards. I always have. This is one of the great insert card concepts. The problem is it's really more of a parallel. Now, it's not exactly a parallel because it's a very truncated card set. It's the same card designs as the main cards in the set. It's just a small group of players are in it and they have different card numbers. But the card design is identical except for the gold leaf on the card front, which makes the gold foil, gold leaf, they look a little bit different. But they're gorgeous card designs regardless, and this is an amazing card set. The insert set, just the concept of it, the whole idea of it, and the way they came across was beautiful because that's what the main cards in the set looked like. The main cards were beautiful. The problem with this card set is it an insert or is it a parallel? Now, technically, I could kind of pull off a ranking of the parallels of 1991, except in order to do it, I'd have to turn to the college cards as well to fill it all out. But this card, it really doesn't quite fit with the parallels either. It's kind of in this nebulous space. So while it's a great card because the main cards in the set were great, is it really an insert? So I got to throw it on here, but I can't really give it full credit. So we're getting close enough. So that's what we're going with here. But as for the actual top five, I'm starting off at the bottom with the Upper Deck holograms. And specifically, baseball is not a part of this. Now, baseball they did do holograms. Well, the main holograms they did were the typical holograms they've been doing all along. The team logos are gorgeous. They really are. But then again, they were gorgeous in 1990. And they were gorgeous in 1989. It's the same thing. And it's pack filler. I mean, these things, you ran through the entire set pretty quickly. They really weren't all that exciting or engaging. They're neat. And I do like the fact that there's more real estate so the logos come through better. But because there's more real estate, there's also more dead area on these cards. So I can't really put them on here because it's tough to get excited about them. As great as they look, again, this was the third year they'd been doing this. But that was what they did for holograms for baseball. It's not what they did for holograms for the other three sports. And the first time they'd done a real hologram set was in 1990-91 hockey. And the cards there were almost ready to be full-blown holograms. They were holograms, they just didn't come through well. So in 1991, they were able to clean things up and actually start to build holograms that were beginning to look really professional. And interestingly enough, the bottom of the three is hockey. Here, most of the card isn't really a hologram. It's a spectral effect on the card, but it doesn't really have three-dimensionality, except they have that little trophy down at the bottom. And the trophy is in 3D. It has very little range, but it does have some 3D effect to it. But the trophies look kind of weird, especially the one with Gretzky here with the hockey pucks on it, because it looks weird in this form, but it looks weird in reality too. And that's kind of the problem that the trophies have, is that none of them really read well. They don't have much motion, much range of motion, and they just don't have a lot of intrigue on their own. The rest of the card has kind of a liveliness, but it doesn't really have an interest. I love the concept of the tight shots of each player. I love the concept of the border. Overall, I just think that the card is really lacking. It wants to be something, it just isn't quite there. In a much better iteration, we've got football. And with football, here they have a two-plane actual hologram. So the front plane is a cutout shot of the player, and the back plane is a play. And that's the big problem that the card has, is the fact that the play is in this big sea of nothingness, kind of like the baseball logos. Now, sometimes you can get the colors to be just right to where the player really comes through, and I like that. It's not common enough in my experience. So unfortunately, I'm not a fan of how the card comes across for the full color effect. So most of the time, it's a hologram that wants to be a hologram. It's kind of a hologram, but it's not engaging. It's kind of boring. But I do like the amount of space in it, so I give them credit for that. But in basketball, they almost pulled everything together. Here, they still have the two planes. They have the cutout shot of the player in the front, and the background is actually another shot of the player with the full background. So there, it actually comes through perfectly. I love the way that it comes across to where you can explore this card and really enjoy it. And in my experience, I've seen the colors come through a lot more easily on these cards than on the football cards. So that's another plus. The problem is that everything kind of runs together. See, normally it's the colors in the image that really brings things through. If you ever wonder why certain animals, you can stop moving and they suddenly can't see you, well, this is the reason. Color adds so much depth. It really helps you to understand the whole context of everything that you're looking at. And when you pull it all away, it just becomes a bunch of stuff, and it's really difficult to perceive what's in there. And that's where this card is really kind of lacking, is the fact that because most of the time you don't see a lot of color, the background is just noise behind the image in the front. So it doesn't quite read well. Basically, this is a case where Upper Deck was really close. They were almost there. And in 1992, they would get there. But this isn't 1992. So the basketball card, I think, is the best. I don't think it's the best created. I think that's the football. It's just that the basketball card is more interesting. That's the nod that it has. Regardless, great concept, great attempt, almost there. For number 4, I'm going with the only entry in the top 5 that is a one sport. So this is the other one sport, which is actually also football. And that's the Pro Line Wives cards. Now, this is on here for 2 reasons. One, I love the concept of the insert. I really do love it. Always have. With football players, we know the football player, well, with athletes, we know the athlete on the field or on the court or on the ice. That's where we know the player. And the off the playing field side of the player, back at this time, you never knew it. So it was really kind of interesting to see a player when they weren't out there. I mean, just going to an autograph signing was an amazing experience because they lived in the real world. It was like teachers. You don't go to the supermarket and find your teacher. The teachers aren't supposed to be there, and when you do see them, it's really confusing as a kid. Well, the same thing with pro players. And so the whole idea of a personal life was a really cool extension of a player that was wonderful for fans to be able to experience. It was also great for the family members, or I shouldn't really say family members as much as the wives, to be a part, because family members are a part of the athlete's activities. If they have a loss, they come home in a bad mood. If they have a win, they come home in a good mood. They're going to come home sore, maybe injured. There's going to be time before the game where they're preparing. Well, guess what? That's the life that the family has with the athlete. And so this actually gave some of the wives the opportunity to kind of be a part of the sport out in front as well, not just in the background. So that part of the set was great. But what I really love about it is the fact that it's only 7 cards in the 91 set, and they really took their time. These look like great modeling shots. It's what they are. The whole set is about modeling clothing, but in the main set with the guys, some of the shots come through really well. Most of them, not so much. But with the 7 shots of the wives, they all look like professional models. They look great. And the card really carries on it. In fact, that's the only knock that the card has, is the fact that it doesn't have any design on it. It's all the image. It's all about the image, and it's literally all the image. That's all that it is. So I love that about the design. It's just that I wish that there was some more design to kind of bump it up. So I think it's a great card design, or I think it's a great card. Just the design is what keeps it from bumping into the top three, which starts off with the Upper Deck Heroes. Now again, I'm not getting into baseball with this. The baseball cards did not come out well. And it's a shame, because in 1990, when they kicked it off with Reggie Jackson, I thought that those cards did look good. They just needed to kind of refine it. In the 91 set, they've got this tan color that's just terrible, and it's a real shame. I don't think the cards came across well. The other three sports all did. And hockey, again, is where I'm kicking it off, where here they have a frame around the portrait. And that cutout frame for hockey is the shield, the NHL shield. And I think that this is a phenomenal framing, the design. The reason that this is so good is because in all of these cases, the player pops out of frame into the matting around the outside. And with the shield, it comes through where you can really see it and really appreciate it. I think that these cards really resonate well that way. The problem is that the mat around the outside, the color of the backdrop around that, is a light tan or a light gray that just kind of washes out, especially with Brett Hull, who's blonde. So guess what? He just blends in. And when you get one of the white jerseys from the Blues, again, it's just one big pastiche. There's nothing that carries through. The shots he has when he was with the Calgary Flames, those work a lot better, but still, there's no cohesiveness to the card. It's just a red jersey that pops out from everything else. So the card design itself could use a lot of help. Basketball is the polar opposite, where in this case, the color, the treatment around the frame of the portrait is gorgeous. It's the wood. It looks great. I love the colors of it, the richness of it, the way that it comes across. And the shots of Jerry West are actually really good. The problem is that the circle that's the cutout is, I've already talked enough about it in the other video. I don't want to go and belabor it. It's a shame because it's boring. The circle is boring, and it absolutely kills the potential of this really amazing card. I mean, even when you look on the card back, the back of the card itself, you can really appreciate all of the wood grain. It comes through gorgeously. On the front, it lacks pop. The wood pulls you in, and then the card doesn't do anything. But football was a perfect marriage of both of those. First off, they used an oval, which they took from the football, which is actually not an oval, but hey, it gave them a great excuse for the perfect cutout for a portrait. Portraits often, if not usually, are done with an oval because it allows you to have height. It has an interesting effect to it. It works well in showcasing, really framing the subject. So they had the excuse to do that. But where this card really comes through is the colors, the color design on the card. Because Joe Montana, he's a 49er. And they really seem to celebrate this with an orangish yellow at the top that fades down into a burnt color down at the bottom. And the burnt color does a good job of grounding the whole card. It creates interest. It creates movement of your eye. Everything comes through beautifully. And there's a red border right around the outside. So this is just through and through a great 49ers card, which is what they used for Joe Namath as well. That card did not succeed because it's such a contrast. But with the Montana cards, it's the perfect combination of all of them. I'm not a fan of the football field on the back, but I don't have a problem with it. I think it comes through pretty well. It's just you look at basketball and go, man, they really could have made a great card with the football cards. They didn't, but that's all right. But for the top two, we're shifting over to Fleer. And we're starting off with actually Fleer with Pro Vision. Now, the Pro Vision cards were done in all three of the sports they were in. And you get to see it's impressive because they did the exact same thing in all three sets. The art is the same. It's just that the border color is different. Starting with basketball, where they have a white border. And the white border It's nice because it makes the cards seem very clean, very well crafted. The problem is the mat is supposed to enunciate what's in the image, and white does not do that. And so the image gets kind of bled out. It really doesn't have much strength. And this creates an unfortunate situation where the material of the Fleer cardstock on the card back is very cardboardy, which makes this feel like a cutout out of a cereal box. It doesn't have a professional feel. And that's unfortunate because the art is great. Now when you shift over to baseball, they did the same thing, except they have a black border. And the black border takes all of the dark colors in the art, pulls it back, and all the lightness pops out. So all the rich colors really come through. The pictures are the same, there's no difference, but they feel wildly different. Plus down at the bottom they have the yellow text, which is enough for you to be aware of it, but not drag your eye, so it's not distracting. Perfect combination. And it's enough that I don't really notice the cardstock on the card back. The whole thing feels pretty professional. But it is lacking something. There's something that it just doesn't quite have, whereas when you go over to football, there it is. And that is the metallic effect on the champagne color of the border makes the card feel like a really expensive, really exquisite card. So much so that you may never notice that the back is cardboard. The card front really looks like a well-crafted affair. And it makes the images, while the images don't pop as much, it makes them feel more professional, more classy, more exciting. This is the card set you look at and you just feel like, okay, this is the greatest collection of sports art ever. And it's got some pretty good art in there. So it's interesting to see the difference between the three borders and how they affect it. I highly doubt that anybody's going to disagree with me too much about football, but it'll be interesting to hear if anybody feels that the blackboard is a lot stronger. But I really do feel that there's a very clear number one card design, which is the Ultra, well, in baseball, it's the Ultra Team cards. And in football, it's the Ultra All-Pro cards. The cards are done basically the same. There's almost no difference. Except for one thing, which is the logo. That's literally the difference, but it affects the entire card. See, in baseball, they just have the little diamond, and the diamond they stick off to the side, so they allow the home plate frame around the portrait to slide all the way up to the top. Because they did that, they have more room for the two cutout shots of the player to get a little bit taller, and they end up creating a two-part card. What I mean by that is because the base slides up to the top, the metallic gold at the top gets kind of overpowered by everything else. There's not much of it up there. And then you slide down to the shots of the player with that fade down to white, and the whole top of the card is kind of like one entity. And then down at the bottom you have this totally isolated color box, and the two don't work together at all, which means that with this card, most of what you're seeing is the white of the card, not the metallic effect. Whereas when you look at the football card, the All-Pro logo takes up a big section of the top, which brings the shield with the portrait down a little bit, and now you have more of the gold, the darker gold effect, the metallic gold up at the top. You're able to see that a lot more. And then the shots of the player are a little bit scrunched down, and so that means that you have an area on the top where you really feel the gold, and then you have a busy area in the middle, and then you have the box at the bottom, and the way that the three combine together, it feels like the whole card is one cohesive affair. It's all combined together. For me, this makes the card so much better than the baseball card. Now, this is nitpicking, obviously, but it's kind of like, do you have a favorite kid? Well, if you have kids, yeah, there's one kid that obviously is your favorite. Do you want to admit it? No. But let's face it, everyone probably knows who that kid is anyway. So there's no reason to go into it. Well, I'm doing this already, so yeah, I'm going to specify which one is better and why. It is tight, but I think for me, it's very clear which one is the better one. But that is how I've ranked the best insert cards of 1991. Interested to hear your take on it. Definitely subscribe if you haven't done so already, and check out my other videos. Thank you very much for watching.